Shalom. First of all, I'd like to start by giving all praises to Yahweh, Bahasham Yahweh Shai, Bahasham Rakakodash, and double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone, and salutations to the Archeum doing this work. Of course, in sincerity and in truth. The title of this video is going to be called Britain's Growing Crime Epidemic, a platform for stricter policing in the UK. The outcome of this video is to highlight that stricter policing methods will be embraced by the UK public. Right now in the UK, you got parents reaching out to the devil for justice, and Jacob is the mule to manufacture that consent. So what I wanted to discuss first was the psychology of media reporting and mass conditioning. In my opinion, the public are being trained to view so-called black people as terrorists, and anyone who embraces their culture by association, you become a terrorist. Now I've noticed the subtle language used to refer or relate, the rise in domestic crimes to international terrorism. So that when you think about crime in black areas, you think terrorists. In earlier years prior to now, black on black crime was the term used by the public to describe the growing killings, stabbings, and shootings committed by blacks against other blacks in the UK. Today we're seeing them crimes looked at in a different way. Black on black crime is just another way of saying crimes committed by Israelites. Now I want to show you evidence to support my claim in a couple of articles. In an article from the Times, dated only a year ago, in 2017, March 12th, the article's title says Al Capone tactic to put screws on terror suspects. Then you read another article on Russia Today a few days ago, the 6th of April 2018. The title says undercover officers and Al Capone tactics deployed as London crime epidemic stuns public. So in Article 1 and Article 2, it uses the term Al Capone tactics, which to me suggests they need the same solution. Both articles a year apart, but the message is very subtle. Now, crimes in poorer council estates, they're stereotyped, and most of the crimes are associated with black urban culture. So I'll say it again. When you think about crime in black areas, they want you to think about terrorists. They want the public to think and embrace that the solution for terrorists is the same for blacks and those that embrace their culture. You become a terrorist. Now in the second article, crime in the UK has been compared to the US, and the need for Al Capone tactics suggests more stereotypes. One in particular, that black people, especially young, are organized criminals, drug dealers, etc., and are compared to the sophisticated network of Al Capone. Now, it don't take a rocket scientist to work out that the people who commit these crimes lack wisdom and sophistication. Just look at the reasons why and the things they commit crimes for. Yet they're being compared to the sophisticated network of Al Capone. In Article 1, the sophisticated network worthy of Al Capone tactics was organized terrorists. Once again, using the term Al Capone tactics as a solution for the crime in the UK offers more than just a solution, but the title of being or criminalizing criminal or non-criminal so-called blacks as being organized terrorism. It's not a difficult concept for people locally and around the world to accept. People have been trained to hate the nationalities or face of terrorism. It's always been a concept among the heathens that black people are to be treated with disdain and, hatred, such as racism. I'd argue that black people are much more hated than terrorists. Having not blown up people, neither arming rebels to fight a fraudulent and illegal war. So from here, I'd like to look at the definition of the word sophisticated. It says, of a machine, system, or technique developed to a higher degree of complexity. Now, you do have wise Jakes, but Jake wastes his potential on being a fool. Another word was system. To create a system, don't you have to network? You know how hard it is to get a Jake to meet up and organize something? A lot of these networks and friendships that Jakes develop is really over weed. What's sophisticated and advanced about that? What advances are there in being a drug dealer? Or you got a name and because you sold a couple of bits and brag about it on social media, talking about you're the man. How does that make you sophisticated? It says of a person or their thoughts, reactions and understanding. A lot of these Jakes are slow. They're slow because they don't see what they're doing is affecting everybody else, including themselves. It says aware of and able to interpret complex issues. The only complex issue a Jake's able to interpret is how they're going to pick up when there's a drought or get their next fix. That's a problem they can solve. The last word here is subtle, and there's a lot more that I wanted to address regarding this word a little bit later on. So if you're sophisticated, you're organized. For example, different levels of government will have something called a summit that only heads of society or government can attend. When these Jakes set up a gang, anyone can join. Does that happen at a summit? Now at the top of a mountain, the white snow or the ice surrounding the glacier, shall I say, surrounding the top of it is also known as a summit. And it's white. So the point I'm trying to convey is that the people who are in charge are not the people selling the 10 bags and the 20 bags and the ounces and so forth. It's the guys at the top, the so-called white people, that are in charge of all these different businesses and dodgy dealings. A suit and tie is the attire for business, not a tracksuit. What's sophisticated about a tracksuit? It's all about paying attention to the language that's being used. Now these young criminals, they are the opposite or the antonym of being sophisticated, which is naive. Like I said, all you have to do is look at the crimes they've committed. Look at the pictures or the list of victims killed in the capital so far this year. Do they look like the faces of people who's involved in a sophisticated network of criminals? Not all of them are black, but a number of them were. And you can see by the images of the people that died, the community that these people come from. The so-called white man, he ain't stupid. He knows the image you have in your mind when you look at those images, that these are areas that are predominantly black or black influenced with social housing and so forth. So continuing on, here's another article from Russia Today, the 9th of April 2018. It says, with 50 killed in London this year, RT asked the public whether they feel safe, and it was a split in public responses. Some said they wanted to leave the country, they didn't feel safe, which were probably Edomites. But others said there is no crime epidemic and that it has all been blown up by the mainstream media. Because they know that Jake has been killing Jake from day dot, which is a part of the curses going back to Deuteronomy 28 and 7, which we'll go into a bit later. The reason why they're making an issue now is because it's an agenda. And by definition, agenda means a list or outline of things to be considered or done. So so-called black people are not only to be considered dangerous, but as terrorists. The second definition, an underlying, often ideological plan or program. So the public are being programmed, and once completed, the program will not be solved. It will just be put out of public interest till later. Lastly, it says a political agenda. In Article 3, someone stated it is just a dramatization to serve a narrative So from here I wanted to look at the definition of the word narrative. It says a story or account of events, experiences, or the like, whether true or fictitious. So the stories or the crimes committed are true, but to credit their criminal organization as sophisticated is fictitious. The third definition says the art, technique, or process of narrating or of telling a story, which we know the stories that he tells has a sinister intention behind it. As it says in the fourth definition, a story that connects and explains a carefully selected set of supposedly true events, experiences, or the like, intended to support a particular viewpoint or thesis, such as you being terrorists. Now moving on to my last article from RT, it says Farage brands London crime epidemic, Sadiq Khan's mess as mayor widely criticised. Now if you didn't know, Nigel Farage was the man that spearheaded the Brexit on Britain's decision to leave the European Union. He was a leader of UKIP, which stands for the UK Independence Party. Now I want you to bear in mind that UKIP had been involved in a multitude of scandals, and one to mention was the one in 2007, the BNP donations. And in a small paragraph regarding the scandal, it says, despite the party denying any links with extreme organisations, in 2007 it emerged that top UKIP official David Abbott, who served on the party's ruling National Executive Committee, had made donations to the American Friends of BNP, which was described by critics as a white supremacist group. One that comes to mind is the KKK. It says Abbott had also attended a meeting and on another occasion a dinner with Nick Griffin, the leader of the BNP, which when I was growing up, my area was dominated by BNP voters, which is the British National Party. And we'll be here all day if I was to tell you about how it was when I was growing up and the things they used to do. But the point is, the sentiment of Nigel Farage has to be considered to be racist. That Sadiq Khan can't be a responsible governor of London. Because of the scandals of the UKIP party, his statements have a sinister meaning, which are all too familiar to the black public. As if to say, purge these niggers, like the KKK have in America in the past. So no matter what he says, he will always be the face and shadow of a racist history of atrocities that happened and are happening to so-called black people. Now, one of the things I said earlier was that Jacob is the mule to manufacture consent. So from here, I want to look at the definition of manufacture of consent, or what it is. It says the practice of controlling or manipulating values. So-called black people have gone from being anti-police and anti-government to asking for police and government support, which equals oppression, which was achieved by manufacturing consent. One of the women in the UK, or the mothers, was quoted saying, "It's all our problems, not just the black and local communities." When the government don't give a shit about that, and neither do the people. Jeremiah 30:17 says, "For I will restore health unto thee, and I will heal thee of thy wounds, saith the Lord, because they called thee an outcast," basically a stranger or a foreigner, an alien, saying, "This is Zion, who no man seeketh after." That's why you're in the deplorable situation you're in the first place, living in the ghettos, on social housing, with these children that are bang out of order and miscreants. You're only relevant now in the news for an agenda. Nothing's meant to get better, it's meant to get worse. Couple of things to mention. You had the riots across the UK, you had the carnival issues retaliatory behavior toward the police, and a community that complained about policing in Britain now consent for stricter policing practices, which could be curfews, and other police responses or police presence. All of this signifying the time of Jacob's trouble. So from here, I'm going to read a couple of scriptures, and with that, I'm going to end it. So this is Jeremiah 30:7. Alas, for that day is great, so that none is like it. It is even the time of Jacob's trouble, but he shall be saved out of it. So a mirror of what's happening to the so-called Negroes in America is exactly what's going to start to happen in the UK, but on a mass scale in such a way you've never seen it before. Police brutality is going to be on an all-time high, and you Negroes, Hispanics, Native Americans, and so forth are going to be called terrorists, especially brothers who are teaching this truth. We're going into a time of desperation, and a lot of people are going to be desperate for an answer, and the answer that will be given to them will be the RFID chip, because 2/3 of our people are going to accept the mark of the beast, and the only ones that are going to be saved from that time of trouble are the brothers that are sighing and crying in the name of Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, in the name of our Heavenly Father and in the name of His Son. This is Ezekiel 28:3. Behold, thou art wiser than Daniel. There is no secret that they can hide from thee. The so-called white man is more wiser than you Jakes, aka sophisticated on a carnal level. Scripture says every thought is deep. So the only people who's going to identify what he's doing are the people that the Spirit's dealing with, which are the men of great millstone. Job 9:24. The earth is given into the hand of the wicked. He covereth the faces of the judges thereof. If not, where and who is he? Esau controls everything, not niggers. Where is Jake in the conversation of the US planning to bomb Syria? Or Russia defending Syria? Or China and Russia's alliance? Which country do we have alliance with? What army do we have? I'm talking about you so-called black people. The Negroes, Hispanics and Native Americans and the 12 tribes of Israel are nothing but servants to the system. Now this is Deuteronomy 28:48. It says, therefore thou shalt serve thine enemies, which the Lord shall send against thee, in hunger and in thirst and in nakedness and in want of all things. So-called white man controls all industries. He controls the food industry, clothing industry. If you want a job, you gotta go to the job industry. You gotta go to him. Drug industry, pharmaceuticals, everything. This is 2 Corinthians 2:11. Lest Satan should get an advantage of us, for we are not ignorant of his devices. Like I said, the only people that can see through this devil are the Lord's elect, the men that the Lord opened their eyes to see spiritually. Touching on narrative, when it comes to narrative, the so-called white man invented the art of fictitious stories. The devil knows that a picture paints 1,000 words, and Jake thinks that the devil is going to bring them justice. He will just bring them oppression. Stop and search in the UK has always been a racist opportunity to harass Jakes. In previous years, we saw it more than triple, with the majority of stop and searches finding out those stop and searches had no justification and no crime was committed. You gotta ask yourself, why do they want to make black crime an issue now? Which we know why, because the so-called white man knows that you're under the curses, and he can use that to his advantage to achieve what he wants to achieve. This is Deuteronomy 28:54. I quoted it wrong earlier. It's not 7th verse, it's the 54th. It says, so that the man that is tender among you and very delicate, his eyes shall be evil towards his brother. And that's the point. And toward the wife of his bosom, and toward the remnant of his children, which he shall leave. He knows that the so-called Negroes' families are destroyed, and he destroyed them. In the 3rd article, one of the women quoted, it was because of a lack of father figures and no discipline. There is no consequence. There are no communities where if kids do something wrong at such an early age, there is no neighbor giving them a clip around the ear. Call me old-fashioned, but I think that is an issue. Kids are not taught manners. There's a lot of truth in what she said, but there's also a lot of truth that she doesn't want to accept. The problem with these so-called black women, and all the 12 tribes women, is that they don't want a man to rule over them. They don't respect order. When that's the way that God intended it to be, they despise it. It says 1 Corinthians 11:3, but I would have you know that the head of every man is Yahushai, and the head of the woman is the man, and the head of Yahushai is Yahweh. But the so-called white man knows to get to us Jake men, all he has to do is get to our woman. As an example is Genesis 3:1. Now the serpent, which is a so-called white man, alright, it was also known as the serpent seed, was more subtle under the radar than any beast of the field. Other people, you so-called black women, don't know what you're asking for. Scripture says, whose possessors slay them and hold themselves not guilty. He ain't gonna care once he shoots your children in the streets. As long as you give him the permission, he's gonna say, look, I got the solution. And trust me, it won't be what you thought you was gonna get. So you want the answers, but you don't want to accept the answers. This is Sirach 25:24. Of the woman came the beginning of sin, and through her we all die. So because you won't accept your husbands to rule over you and establish order in the household, that time of Jacob's trouble is going to be in full effect, and your sons and daughters are going to be judged, put to death, and deemed terrorists by your so-called government that you asked for to be the daddy of your bastard kids. When John 10:10 tells you, the thief cometh not but to steal and to kill, and he already stole everything you got, which was your heritage, and now he's looking to kill you and your kids. So with that, I hope you were edified. This was Britain's growing crime epidemic, a platform for stricter policing in the UK, and the topic was psychology of media. And with that, I'm going to say shalom.